Abandoned Doberman, puppy, left to die in the rain. But his second chance changed everything. That night the rain beat against the tin roof like iron whips. Through the shriek of the wind and the metallic scent that cut through my bones, I heard it, the faintest sound a human ear could catch. The ragged breath of a creature slipping away from this world. When I shone my flashlight down, my heart stopped. It was there, curled up in the black mud, trembling from head to toe. A tiny Doberman puppy so small it barely looked real was left alone in the freezing rain of a November night. Its black and tan coat clung to its thin frame, drenched and cold as ice. Its eyes were shut tight, as if hope had already left. No one stopped. No one cared. Only the relentless rain and the weight of the dark. I thought it was dead until I saw its chest rise, barely a fragile motion like a breath trying to exist. I had to stare to see it. It was the movement of a dying flame, a wisp of smoke fighting the wind. In that moment, surrounded by rain and darkness, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I couldn't walk away. I couldn't let an abandoned Doberman puppy left to die and forgotten in the rain take its last breath alone. Not tonight. Not under my watch. My name is Jack Turner. I'm 52 years old and I've lived alone in the small town of Bayfield, Oregon, for 5 years. 5 years ago, I lost my wife, Laura, to a merciless cancer. Since the day she left, this house has known only 3 sounds: the ticking clock on the wall, the wind through the window cracks, and the memories no one dares to touch anymore. The kitchen still smells faintly of her morning coffee. The armchair, where she used to read, still stands there, but now it's just an empty thing covered in dust. I used to be a mechanic, the kind of man who lived by the growl of engines, the sting of motor oil, and the quiet satisfaction of fixing what was broken. I thought I could repair anything with my hands, but when Laura died, I learned there are things in this life that no hand can mend. Every sound in my world went silent. The quiet became unbearable. After I buried her, I made myself a promise I would never adopt another animal again. We used to have a golden retriever named Buddy. He passed away 2 years before Laura did, and that pain had already taken more out of me than I could bear. When Laura followed, I thought my heart had gone with her. I couldn't know I wouldn't survive another loss. No more love to give, no more pain to endure. That night, I only meant to take out the trash. A simple, ordinary thing. I was going to come back inside, pour myself a cup of the cold coffee left from the morning, because I no longer cared to make it fresh and sit in silence like every night before. Sit on the old couch, stare at nothing, and wait for sleep to come if I was lucky. But then through the howl of the wind and the hammering rain, I heard it. A whimper, weak, hoarse, desperate cutting through the storm. At first, I thought it was the wind, or maybe just the imagination of a man who'd been alone for far too long. But it came again. Faint but unyielding, like the last cry for help from someone who had already given up. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped onto the porch. The beam flickered through the curtain of rain, and then I saw it. Next to the trash bin, half submerged in muddy water, it lay there. A Doberman puppy, no more than 3 or 4 months old. Its soaked fur clung to a fragile frame so thin I could count every rib. Tiny, folded ears. 4 trembling legs. The whole body was drawn tight as if it was trying to hold on to the last bit of warmth it had left. I knelt, not caring that the mud was up to my knees. I reached out, and the moment my hand touched it, I froze. It was cold, so cold I thought I'd touched a corpse. Its breath was so faint I had to press my ear to its tiny chest to hear it. One breath. Long. Broken. Then another 10 seconds later. Each inhale sounded like a battle. It was light as ashes when I lifted it, like holding a fading memory. like a life already halfway gone. Its eyes opened barely, and in the dim beam of my flashlight I saw them, not pleading, not hopeful, but surrendering. The eyes of a creature that had given up waiting quietly for death to come. And in that trembling little body I saw myself. Someone the world had forgotten. Someone who'd lost hope. Someone waiting for the end alone. My tears fell onto its soaked fur, blending with the rain. I didn't know if I was crying for it or for me. "Not tonight, kid," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Neither of us dies tonight." I wrapped it in my denim jacket, the one Laura had given me for my last birthday before she passed, and ran for my old truck. The engine coughed 3 times before starting in the freezing rain. I drove through the storm wipers, slashing back and forth, tears and rain mixing on the windshield. I held the puppy close to my chest with one arm, steering with the other. I could feel its faint breath through the fabric. Every breath was a small miracle. "Hang on," I said, not sure if I was talking to it or to myself. "We're almost there. Just breathe. Don't give up on me." Bayfield Animal Rescue Clinic was the only place still open at 10 o'clock that night. The fluorescent sign flickered outside a weak yellow light, shimmering through the rain like a distant lighthouse. I burst through the door, drenched from head to toe, clutching the puppy as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Dr. Collins, the night vet. A tall man in his 60s with graying hair and kind eyes was sipping coffee behind the counter. When he saw me, he jumped up. "Jack, what happened?" "I found him." I gasped. "Outside my house. In the rain. He's barely alive." Dr. Collins hurried over and opened the jacket. The moment he saw the little Doberman, his face changed. He placed a steady finger on its neck, checked the pulse, then the pupils, then touched its ears and paws. "Severe hypothermia," he said quietly, his tone grave. "Body temperature's dangerously low, heart rate's slow, almost undetectable. He's barely breathing." I grabbed his sleeve. "Can you save him?" He looked at me, then at the puppy. I saw hesitation in his eyes, the kind that comes with truth you don't want to speak. "I'll do everything I can, Jack," he said gently. "But I have to be honest. He's weak. His body's been through too much. He might not make it through the night." "Do whatever it takes," I said, voice trembling but firm. "I'll cover everything. I don't care how much. Just don't let him die alone, please." Dr. Collins nodded. "I understand." As he carried the puppy toward the emergency room, something small dropped onto the cold tile floor. A soft, metallic clink. I bent down and picked it up. A knitted collar, old, soaked, faded blue. Hand-woven, uneven stitches frayed from time. And in the center, sewn in white thread, a single letter M. I clenched the collar in my hand, feeling the wet yarn against my palm. A trace of the past. Proof that someone at some time had loved this puppy. Someone had taken the time to weave this. Someone had sewn that letter with love. So why had they left him in the rain to die? That question haunted me as I sat on the hard plastic chair in the waiting room. The fluorescent lights buzzed above. The rain kept pounding the windows. The old heater hummed in the corner. I sat there alone, clutching the soaked blue collar, listening to the rain. I didn't pray for myself. I'd stopped praying long ago, ever since my prayers failed to save Laura. But that night I prayed. I prayed for the little Doberman puppy fighting for his life in the room beyond that door. I prayed for a miracle. Just a small one. 30 minutes passed, then an hour, then 2. I didn't leave. I sat there staring at the emergency room door, waiting. I'd let everything I loved slip away. I let Buddy go. I let Laura go. I let my own life drift into silence and loneliness. But I wasn't going to let this little dog go. Not tonight. Not again. At 3 in the morning, the door opened. Dr. Collins stepped out, his face-weary apron-soaked hands still gloved. But there was something in his voice, not hope, not despair, something in between. "He's still with us, Jack," he said softly. "Still breathing. Just barely, but still." I stood up, my legs numb from hours of waiting. "Can I see him?" He nodded. "Yes. But you have to understand, the next few hours are critical." I walked into the emergency room. The scent of antiseptic filled the air, mixed with the warmth of heating lamps. Under the golden light on a metal table lined with soft towels, the Doberman puppy lay still. His head was gently wrapped in gauze. A tiny IV ran into his back leg. A small blue blanket covered him, a heating pad underneath. The heart monitor beeped slow and steady. His body still trembled slightly, not from cold anymore, but from exhaustion, like he was fighting to hold on to every second. I moved closer and placed my trembling hand on his little chest. It was warmer now, not the icy cold I'd felt when I found him. I could feel the weak but steady rhythm of his heart. I could feel the faint, stubborn breath that refused to give up. "Hang in there, kid," I whispered, tears sliding down my face. "I know you're tired. I know you want to let go. But don't give up. Not tonight. Fight a little longer. For me. Please." As if he heard me, the monitor gave a strange sound. At first, the beeps slowed, scattered. Beep. Long pause. Beep. Long pause. Fading. My heart froze. I looked at Dr. Collins in panic. But then slowly, one beat at a time, it steadied. Beep, beep, beep. Still slow, but stronger. More determined. A small line of light pierced the dark. "He's fighting," Dr. Collins said beside me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "He's choosing to live, Jack." I stood there in silence, my hand still on the puppy's chest, tears flowing freely. Outside the window, the rain kept falling. But inside this small room, beneath the golden warmth of the lamp, a tiny miracle was happening. Dr. Collins spoke again, his tone soft but heavy with meaning. "He's got a strong will, Jack. I've done this for 30 years, and I've seen a lot of cases like this. Some make it, some don't. But the ones that do, they survive, not because of medicine or machines. They survive because someone stays, because someone believes they deserve to live. And I think he feels that from you." I looked down at the puppy, my heart full of something I couldn't name. And in that moment, at 3 in the morning, in that little room, I understood something profound. Sometimes the only thing that keeps a being, human or animal, from giving up is another soul who refuses to walk away. Someone who stays. Someone who believes that life is still worth fighting for, even when everything looks lost. Laura stayed with me through her final days. I held her hand when she left. I didn't let her die alone. And now I wouldn't let this little dog die alone either. 3 days later, he opened his eyes. I was sitting beside the intensive care pen where Dr. Collins had placed him for monitoring. I'd been there every day, morning and night, talking to him. I told him about Laura, about Buddy, about my life. I didn't know if he could hear me, but I kept talking anyway. Then, on the 3rd morning, with a cup of coffee in my hand, I saw it movement. His eyes opened. 2 brown eyes, hazy and confused, but alive. They moved around, searching, then found me. "Hey, kid," I whispered, smiling so wide my cheeks hurt. "Welcome back." He tried to lift his head, but was too weak. I gently placed my hand on him, stroking softly. He closed his eyes again, but not from pain. From peace. I named him Scout. Because I believed I hadn't found him, he had found me first. When Dr. Collins walked in and saw Scout awake, his face broke into a wide smile. "Now that's a little miracle, Jack," Yeah, I said, quietly, unable to take my eyes off him. It really is. Dr. Collins sat down beside me, holding the faded blue knitted collar I'd given him to keep. That letter M, he said it might be a clue to whoever owned him before. Do you want me to look into it? I stared at the collar. Part of me didn't want to know because knowing might hurt more. But another part needed to. Scout deserved to have his story told. Yes, I said, I want to know. The next day, I started asking around. Bayfield was a small town, everyone knew everyone. It didn't take long before I had an answer. Mrs. Grace Miller, an elderly woman who lived 2 blocks from me, invited me in for tea. She sat across from me, her eyes heavy with sadness. That letter M, she said softly, I think I know who it belonged to. She told me about a family who lived 3 streets over the Parkers. Tom Parker and his 12-year-old son, Ethan. His wife, Maggie, died in a car accident 2 months ago. Mrs. Miller said, her voice trembling. She was one of the kindest souls I've ever known. She loved animals. Before she passed, she bought a Doberman puppy for Ethan's birthday. His name was Milo. She knitted that blue collar herself, sewed the letter M, her initial, so that Milo would always remember he was loved. I gripped the collar tighter, feeling the rough texture of the yarn between my fingers. After Maggie died, Mrs. Miller continued Tom. He wasn't himself anymore. He was shattered, so was Ethan, but the boy still tried to care for Milo even while he was falling apart inside. Then one night, about 3 weeks ago, Tom told Ethan they couldn't keep Milo. That hearing the dog bark, watching him run through the house, just reminded him of Maggie, and he couldn't take it anymore. Tears burned my eyes. I knew that kind of pain too well. Tom told Ethan to take Milo somewhere, to leave him where someone kind might find him, and the boy did it because he was just a child, hurting and confused. Since that night, he hasn't talked much. He blames himself. I stood. I need to see them. Mrs. Miller nodded. I think that's the right thing to do. That afternoon, I drove to the Parker house. It was a small place, its white paint peeling the front yard covered with dry leaves no one had swept. Tom opened the door. He looked around 40, but the grief had aged him years beyond that. His face was pale, his beard untrimmed, his eyes hollowed with exhaustion. Can I help you, Jack Turner? I said. I live nearby. I think I found your dog. His expression shifted, shock, fear, and something that looked like painful hope. Ethan, he called into the house. Come here, son. A thin boy appeared, small, frail, with brown hair and eyes that looked just like his mother's in the framed photo hanging on the wall. Ethan looked at me cautiously. I held out the faded blue knitted collar. The moment he saw it, he broke down. Not soft tears, full shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep. He ran to me and clutched the collar as if it were the last piece of a world he'd lost. This was my mom's, he whispered through the tears. M stands for Maggie. She made it for Milo. That dog. That's my mom's dog. Tom placed a trembling hand on his son's shoulder, his face twisted in pain and regret. I'm sorry, he said hoarsely. I just couldn't take it. Hearing him cry every night after she died, watching him search the house for her, every time I saw him, I saw Maggie. And it hurt too much. I told Ethan to let him go. I said someone kind would find him, that he'd have a better home. But the truth is, I was running away. He looked at me, tears streaking his cheeks. Is he alive? Yes, I said. He's alive, and he's fighting. I named him Scout. Ethan lifted his head, hope flickering in his eyes. Can I see him? Yes, I said, anytime you want. I didn't blame them. I couldn't. Because I understood that kind of pain, the kind where your heart is so broken you can't care for anything, not even yourself. Sometimes people do terrible things not out of cruelty, but because they're drowning in sorrow and don't know how to come up for air. I knelt down to Ethan's level, meeting his eyes. "You don't have to blame yourself anymore," I said softly. "Scout isn't abandoned now, and neither are you. We'll take care of him together, okay?" Ethan nodded hard, tears still streaming down his face, but in his eyes there was light. A light that had been gone for far too long. I saw that same light in Scout's eyes later that day when I told him everything. A light I'd forgotten existed. Faith. A week later, Scout came home with me. The house that once held only the sound of a ticking clock and silence now echoed with tiny claws tapping across the wooden floor. With the faint breaths of a sleeping dog curled beside the couch, with the rhythmic thump of a wagging tail every time I walked into the room. Every morning, I woke to find Scout lying by my bed, eyes bright and waiting. Every night, I no longer sat alone in silence. I lay on the floor, stroking his fur, telling him about my day. For the first time in 5 years, the house didn't feel like a tomb anymore. It felt like home. Tom and Ethan came by on weekends. Ethan would sit with Scout for hours, telling him stories about Maggie. Tom and I sat on the porch in quiet company, but it wasn't a lonely quiet anymore. Then 3 weeks after Scout came home, he got sick. I woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of labored breathing. Scout lay in his small bed, gasping, trembling all over. When I touched him, his body was burning. High fever, lung infection. I drove him to the clinic immediately. Dr. Collins worked through the night. "This is serious, Jack," he said, his face tight with concern. "His lungs are still weak from the hypothermia. If he stops fighting, he won't make it." I sat beside Scout all night, my hand never leaving his paw. The monitor beeped in erratic, terrifying patterns. His breaths grew shallow. His eyes opened, meeting mine with deep exhaustion. "Listen, kid," I said, my voice trembling but steady. "I know you're tired. I know you've been fighting too long. But you can't give up now." I leaned forward, pressing my forehead gently against his. "You were abandoned, left freezing in the rain, left to die because no one wanted you. But you didn't break. You didn't surrender. You fought. And now someone needs you. Ethan needs you. Tom needs you. And I need you, Scout." My tears fell onto his fur. "You taught me how to live again. You reminded me that life is still worth living, even after loss. So don't give up on me now. Fight a little longer. For all of us." That night felt endless. I sat there holding Scout's paw, praying harder than I ever had before. When dawn broke and the first light touched the window, Scout opened his eyes. His breathing steadied. His fever broke. The monitor beeped in a strong, even rhythm. Collins walked in, checked him, and gave me a weary smile. He made it. I don't know how, but he made it. I laughed through tears, the first real laugh since Laura died. A laugh filled with relief, with joy, with life. I held Scout gently, feeling the warmth of his body against my chest. And I understood then that saving a life doesn't just change them, it saves the part of you that died along the way. Scout looked at me, and his eyes were no longer the same eyes from that rainy night. No fear, no surrender, just the clear, steady light of trust. The light of unconditional love. A year later. Scout had grown into a strong, beautiful Doberman. His black and tan coat gleamed like silk under the sun. His stance was confident, his gaze calm and kind. When he ran across the yard, it was hard to believe he was the same broken little puppy I'd found in the rain. Tom and Ethan still visited every month, sometimes every week. They never came to take Scout back. They knew where he belonged. They came to be part of the small family we had built from the ruins. One quiet weekend afternoon, sunlight filtered through the trees, painting the porch in a soft golden glow. We sat there, Tom, Ethan, and I, in the peaceful silence of an ordinary yet deeply meaningful day. Scout lay between Ethan and me, his head resting on the boy's lap, those bright brown eyes gazing up his tail, wagging gently, rhythmically, like the heartbeat of something that had finally been made whole. Tom sat beside us holding a glass of lemonade, his eyes fixed on the yard where yellow leaves drifted lazily in the wind. The air was calm. No one felt the need to speak. We just sat there together, sharing the quiet gift of that moment. Ethan stroked Scout's back, then reached into his backpack. I watched curiously as he pulled out a small object, a framed photograph wrapped carefully in thin paper. "Mr. Jack," he said softly, his voice trembling with emotion, "I want you to have this." I took the frame, my hands shaking slightly. When I peeled the paper away, I had to catch my breath. It was a picture of Maggie, smiling radiant, her face glowing like sunlight after rain. In her arms was a tiny Doberman puppy, ears still floppy, black eyes fixed on her with pure, innocent love. It was Scout back when he was just a baby, when his life was still untouched by loss. Beneath the photo, written in a child's careful slanted handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for giving him a home. My mom will always be grateful." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my emotions in check, but couldn't. I pulled the boy into my arms, holding him tight, unable to speak through the lump in my throat. Ethan hugged me back, and I could feel his shoulders trembling. Tom rested a hand on my shoulder, saying nothing, but his eyes said everything. That evening, after Tom and Ethan went home, I sat alone on the porch. Scout ran through the yard, chasing leaves in the wind, strong and alive, his body gleaming under the fading sun. I watched him and still couldn't quite believe it. This was the same puppy I'd carried through the rain that night, barely breathing, nearly gone. I stood and walked inside, glancing at the wall in my living room. I hung the photo of Maggie and Scout right next to Laura's picture. Two women I had never met yet, both had changed my life forever. Beside them, I placed the faded blue knitted collar with the letter M, the collar Maggie had made for Scout with her own hands. Two souls. Two stories. But one miracle, a second life, a second chance, proof that love never truly dies. I stood there for a long time looking at those photos, feeling peace settle deep in my chest. Then I went back out to the porch and sat in the old wooden chair watching Scout play under the soft glow of the setting sun. The light poured across the porch like a quiet blessing. I thought of that rainy night, the night I thought I had lost everything, the night I believed my life had no meaning left. I remembered that emptiness, that isolation, the way I shut the world out. But now, watching Scout strong, joyful, alive, I understood. He was just an abandoned Doberman puppy left to die alone in the rain. But that night, both of us were saved. I took a deep breath, letting the moment fill me, and turned to you, the one who has stayed with me through this story. I leaned forward, my voice steady, my gaze hopeful. "Now, I want to ask you something. Actually, a few things. First, if you're thinking about bringing a four-legged friend into your life, adopt, don't shop." I paused, letting the words settle. Go visit your local animal rescue shelters. Ask about their animals. Meet the dogs and cats waiting behind those cages. Look into their eyes. You'll see each one has a story. Each one deserves a second chance. And maybe, just maybe, one of them is waiting for you. If you can't adopt right now because of your situation, your job, or anything else, that's okay. I understand. But please remember this. Keep it in your heart. And when you're ready, go back. They'll still be there waiting. Second, share this story. If Scout's story touched your heart, if it brought tears to your eyes, if it stirred something inside you, share it. With the people you love, with your family, with your friends. Because somewhere among them, there might be someone who needs to hear it more than anyone else. There might be someone who's lonely, hurting, or losing faith in kindness. And maybe, just maybe, this story will remind them that no matter how cruel the world can be, compassion still exists. Love still wins. Third, help if you can. Animal rescues always need support. They work tirelessly, often with so little to save lives the world has turned away from. If you can donate even a little, do it. If you have time, volunteer. If you can't do either, then spread awareness. Talk about it. Every small act creates a ripple that can change everything. I looked straight ahead, my voice quiet but certain. And finally, if you're going through something hard, if you feel lost alone or like you've stopped believing in life, remember this: second chances can come from the most unexpected places. For me, it was a Doberman puppy lying in the rain, barely holding on. For you, it might be something else, a chance meeting, a kind word, a small act of grace, but it will come. You just have to open your heart to it. I smiled, a real, warm, hopeful smile. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to our story. And thank you for giving Scout and me the chance to share it with you. And remember, when you save a life, you don't just change theirs. You change your own. I'm living proof of that. Scout walked over and sat beside me, looking straight into the camera. His tail wagged gently, steady like a soft goodbye. I placed my hand on his head, stroking him slowly. From Scout and from me, be kind. Stay compassionate. And never underestimate the power of a single act of goodness. One small act can save a life. One moment of choice can change a destiny. I stood, and Scout followed me. See you in the next story. And remember, adopt, don't shop. I waved gently, the smile still on my lips. Scout barked once, as if agreeing. And as the last light of sunset fell across the porch, we turned and walked inside two souls, once broken, now mended by the most powerful thing in the world, unconditional love.